After having been postponed early this year due to COVID, the Sydney Film Festival is raring to go from the 3rd to the 14th of November in cinema in Sydney. And it's my great pleasure to be speaking to the director of the Sydney Film Festival, as I speak to him every year, Nashen Moodley. Nashen, welcome to Movie Metropolis.
Oh, thanks, Peter. Thanks so much for having me back on the show.
And congratulations on being able to have an in-cinema film festival. It must be so exciting for you and for all the filmmakers involved.
Yes, it really went down to the wire, I must say. It's the third time we've tried to do the Sydney Film Festival in cinemas this year. We were originally scheduled for June, then postponed to August, and now finally November. And it really is a great relief for us, and I think wonderful for the filmmakers, and I hope also for the audience, because it's a program of really great films that we've accumulated over the course of 2 years, whereas usually we present what we say is the best of the previous year's cinema. This time, I think we really have some of the best films of the last 2 years. So it's great to be at this stage where we can say we're going ahead.
Absolutely, and you're quite right. When I looked at the program, and a few of the films I've seen, but most, of course, I haven't. But nevertheless, there's so many important filmmakers and other films that are screening. You've been able to pick some of the best films around the world at the moment.
That's right. That's right. In the last weeks of the selection, and we only finished the selection really just a few weeks ago, just before we launched the entire program, we managed to secure wonderful new films from films that have played at the Venice, Toronto, and Telluride festivals, for instance, films that are very highly anticipated. So despite the challenges of the last 2 years and this year in particular with the multiple postponements, I'd say we're really delighted with what we've got and what we're going to present at the festival. Absolutely,
and it's the 68th Sydney Film Festival, so we should put that into historic context, shouldn't we?
That's right. 68 years. I think probably close to 12,000 films over that time, and the festival had gone consistently over that entire period until last year, when we were unable to present an in-cinema festival, of course, but did present a virtual edition and awards. But we're really very happy to be back in cinemas this year, and then the next edition is not far away. We will return to our June dates. So June 2022, we'll present the 69th edition.
Excellent. And I notice also you've got an online component for the Sydney Film Festival also in November.
That's right. So the In-Cinema Festival will happen from the 3rd to the 14th of November, and the On-Demand program, which is a bespoke selection of films, will happen from the 12th to the 21st of November, and that's available Australia-wide.
Excellent. Now let's talk about some of the films, and I noticed your opening night film is one that sounds really terrific, Here Out West.
That's right. We're very happy to open the festival with an Australian film and a Sydney film, a film set in Western Sydney that came about in a very unusual process where 8 talented writers from various backgrounds came together with a creative team to tell stories connected to their lives and their communities and their experiences. And these stories interweave into something quite striking, and a film that I think is going to play extremely well on the opening night, and one that's going to be really enjoyed by the audience, and gives us a portrait of a contemporary multicultural Australia that we don't often see on the screen. And I think that's really something quite important that the filmmakers have done, and something that we wish to support.
Excellent stuff. And of course, there are some highly anticipated films like Dune and The French Dispatch, which you'll be screening.
Yes, absolutely. And those have gone extremely well. I think Dune sold out within a couple of hours of the announcement of the program. The French Dispatch, I think, is sold out already. There are many other films that we managed to secure at the last moment. Paolo Sorrentino's fantastic The Hand of God Jane Campion's The Power of the Dog, which is an astonishing film. Pedro Almodovar's Parallel Mothers. So a range of very anticipated hot ticket films, and yeah, it's a pleasure to present them.
And a film I'm really anticipating with great excitement, a film called Titane.
Yes, it's a shocking film. I'm really shocked because I watch a lot of films, but even I was shocked by this one. It won the Palme d'Or, of course, in Cannes.
Yeah.
There's a funny moment when after seeing the film, I was trying to describe it to my colleagues, and someone said, "You mean sex in cars?" And I said, "No, I meant sex with cars." And it's a film that really takes us on a crazy ride, but brings together all sorts of elements. It's extremely wild at moments, but at the same time, there's a quite tender family drama component as well. It's certainly not one for everyone, but I think it's a film that's really vital and energetic and doing something quite unlike anything else. So yeah, it's going to be quite a screening, I predict, at the State Theatre on the first viewing.
I'm sure it will be. And I think that's a real purpose of a film festival, is to show films that would sometimes not necessarily be seen by a wider audience, but you get a chance to sample some films that are quite distinctive.
I agree with you completely. I think it's a film that belongs in a film festival because it's going to have people debate over it. They're going to be some people who absolutely love it, some who may walk out after the first few minutes. It's going to be, I think it's what festivals are for, to present the opportunity for such edgy works to be seen by a big audience and to be debated and talked about.
Absolutely. Earlier this year, I was on the Frapeschi jury for the Berlinale, and I was able to see a number of really interesting films. And speaking of controversial films, Bad Luck Banging or Loony Porn, Radu Jude's film, I thought, wow, will that ever be screened in Australia?
Well, it will be. And again, it's one that you might have some people walking out in those first 10 minutes or so, which you'll recall well, because it's impossible to forget. But I think I have such a great admiration for the film. I think the film is so clever and provocative. And if I also find it very funny and can see that maybe not everyone will find it as funny as I do, but it's a vital work. I think it looks at a society and really interrogates that society. And if you stick with it, I think the rewards are rich. I really do.
Look, I fully agree with you, and I'm so glad that you're screening it. But wow. Anyway, let's move on a bit. And another film I saw on that Frapeschi jury is one that really impressed me. A film called Night Raiders.
Yeah, it's a really interesting film. A science fiction film that's quite different. That comes from a First Nations perspective, and one that I think is very powerful. It imagines a world in the near future, I guess, where children are owned by the state, and it's also about natural resources that are being diminished and control over those resources. So I think a science fiction film with a serious message that resonates today, but also looks at historical circumstances affecting First Nations people. So a very powerful film.
Yes, and I'm so glad you're screening it. Frederick Wiseman, of course, is such a magnificent documentary filmmaker, and I notice you've got his latest film, City Hall.
Yes, we've shown many, if not all, of Wiseman's recent works, certainly, but his works have played at the festival for decades. And it's great I think this is really a fantastic film, because while everywhere in the world, I think people are to an extent disillusioned by politics. City Hall takes us into a city government that has its share of problems, but where people are really trying to make a difference and trying to use government to improve people's lives in Boston. And yeah, I think fascinating characters that we meet in the film, and as we go into the process of city government. And Wiseman, of course, is such a keen observer of institutions, and again has done a fantastic job.
I look forward to it. Mark Cousins, of course, has done such magnificent work with his history of cinema, and he's back with a new series, The Story of Film, A New Generation.
Yes, it kicks off on the great series that he made, The Story of Film, updated now to look at films that have emerged since 2000, I think it is, that he's focused on in this work. And it's really fantastic to watch it, because of course so many of those films have played at the festival in recent times. And I think he's, again, another keen observer of cinema, able to really pick out what's really moving the art form forward, and has such a wide knowledge of cinema from every corner of the world, and is able to make these connections that you wouldn't necessarily make yourself. But I think he's very good at showing us the state of cinema today. And yeah, it's wonderful. It's wonderful to watch.
I'm sure it would be. His style of filmmaking is superb. And a documentary I also have seen is about a little-known Australian filmmaker who worked in Hollywood, a little-known in Australia, although he should be well-known, John Farrow.
That's right. That's right. And we've been speaking to the filmmakers, Claude Gonzalez and Franz Vandenberg, for years about this film. It's really been a passion project for them, a labor of love. They've worked on it for a very long time. And through this work, through this documentary, I think John Farrow gets a reevaluation, and perhaps will be seen as someone more prominent, and will become more known. And he did some wonderful works. And this film is quite fascinating. John Farrow, of course, is the father of Mia Farrow, and the film also speaks to John Farrow, some of John Farrow's relatives who still live in Sydney. So it's a great story about a filmmaker who's perhaps not as prominent now as he should be, but also making a connection to his Australian roots.
Absolutely, absolutely right. Now, official competition, I've mentioned a couple of films, but it's good to see that The Drover's Wife is part of the official competition.
Yes, again, it's a film we saw quite some time ago and instantly fell in love with. It was a film that had various release dates. Again, it's one that's had to move several times. So we're so delighted to present it. Leah Purcell has done a tremendous job. She's taken on the short story, Henry Lawson's classic short story, a few times before. She adapted it into a novel and then into a stage play, which I happily saw and was fantastic. But with the cinema version, I think she's again done an extraordinary job, not just directing the film, but acting in the film and writing the film. And it's a story set a long time ago, but she brings to it a contemporary resonance and power. And I think it's one that's just going to blow people away. I think it's going to be, again, a tremendous screening at the festival.
Looking forward to it. And one of my favourite German filmmakers, Christian Petzold, who I met a few years ago, has got his latest film in the festival, Undine.
Yes, that's right. We again wish to present the film in the competition last year in 2020. And of course, the festival couldn't go ahead, but I'm so happy that we've managed to still keep the film in the festival and in the competition. Christian Petzold is one of my favorite German filmmakers, and Undine is a fantastic film that takes a myth about a nymph who can move from the water to earth, and as she seeks love, but if her lover betrays her, she must kill him and return to the water. And there's a modern twist on that myth. Yeah, it's fantastic to see.
Okay, look forward to it. And it's great to see the Thai filmmaker who made, of course, Uncle Bunmi with his latest film, Memoria.
Yes, Apichatpong Weerasethakul's new work is his first film in English and Spanish. His first film made outside Thailand, and stars Tilda Swinton. And it's a film very much about sound. It's a film about past lives again. It's about making sense of this world, of this time. I think there are connections made between the political situations in Colombia and Thailand, and his work is always very difficult to describe in a narrative sense, especially. But I think it's a film that one should immerse oneself in, and again, the rewards are tremendous. It's a brilliant work.
I'm sure it is. And as a nice contrast, you have a musical, Dear Evan Hansen.
Yes, this was the opening night film of the Toronto Film Festival. We don't often have musicals at the festival, actually, but this one is a very contemporary musical looking at the lack of connection between young people, especially, and is really very moving. I must say, I'm not usually a fan of musicals, but I was very moved by this film, and the music is very good, and I think it's a very touching film about young people in particular lacking connection and how they can find that. And yes, beautifully performed, great cast. So I think it's one that will really not only entertain people, but also give them something to think about very seriously.
Sure. I know we have to finish soon, but another film that I saw at the for Presky Jury at the Berlinale also impressed me, a film called Censor.
Oh yes, the horror film.
Yes,
that also looks at something I didn't really know about, but video nasties, like this kind of schlocky films made in Britain that were thought by some to be corrupting all of British society. And this is a film set in the censor board, and one person, a meticulous censor, who sees something in a film that she thinks is somehow connected to a traumatic event of her past. And yeah, it's very impressively done. A film selected by my colleague Richard Kuipers, who creates our Freak Me Out section, who's a huge fan of the film.
Look, it's such a terrific array of films. We're only touching the surface because there's so much going on. I suppose the best thing for people to do is to go to the website.
Absolutely. The entire program's on our website. It's sff.org.au. And there you'll find, yes, the entire program and how to get tickets. But also, I think for your listeners, Peter, it's a way to see the on-demand program so that they can access that throughout the country. And even though that only starts, the on-demand component only starts on the 12th of November, you can actually buy tickets for those films now, and they are limited capacities. So I should point that out. So it is worthwhile to have a look early and make your selections early, and purchase your tickets early, and those films will become available from the 12th of November.
Excellent. Sydney Film Festival happening in November. We've been speaking to the director of the Sydney Film Festival, Nashen Moodley. Nashen, as always, thanks so much for talking with me.
Thanks, Peter. Thanks so much for having me on the show again.
Bye-bye.
Bye.